Welcome back. I'm Jonathan Hill, and we're going to be continuing the work on the Dionysian Corpus. Again, this is work that has run out of the parish of St. Seraphim of Seraph in Boise, Idaho. And to that end, because it is work for the parish, it is done for the parish, I'm going to include the donation link below for the parish. Again, we just put in a roof about a year or two ago. Donations are very, very helpful. I'm also going to add the donation to the monastery of Dionysios Areopagite. Father Maximus has been very helpful in helping me understand and teaching me this material, and both priests, Father David and Father Maximus, are rather supportive of this material. So if you feel so inclined to donate to either, I would be greatly appreciated. Again, this material is really for them and for those communities. But let's continue. So in the last video, we talked about part 2. We talked about transcendentals, about how God is beyond all affirmation and all negation, how cataphatic statements become more and more specific, and how apophatic statements become more and more general, and how God is beyond all of these things. We talked about the transcendentals being one, truth, goodness, and beauty, and we got a little bit, gave a little foreshadowing of getting into the divine names. I'm actually going to skip section 3. Section 3 of Mystical Theology. I'm going to wait to get back to it when I get into the divine names. It really is more about the divine names. It's also quite long, and it's structured in a kind of an awkward way to do a video on. So I'm going to wait to hold that off. I'm going to hold that off and do that when I get to divine names. But I'm just going to trigger on here, and we're going to look at section 4. Again, when we look through the material, we'll read the whole paragraph, and then we'll go back and discuss what it means, what's going on. 4. That he who is the preeminent cause of everything sensibly perceived is not himself any one of the things sensibly perceived. We therefore maintain that the universal cause transcending all things is neither impersonal nor lifeless, nor irrational nor without understanding. In short, that it is not a material body, and therefore does not possess outward shape or intelligible form, or quality or quantity, or solid weight, nor has it any local existence which can be perceived by sight or touch, nor has it the power of perceiving or being perceived, nor does it suffer any vexation or disorder through the disturbance of earthly passions, or any feebleness through the tyranny of material chances, or any want of light, nor any change, or decay, or division, or deprivation, or ebb and flow, nor anything else which the senses can perceive. None of these things can either be identified with it or attributed unto it. Good. This is exactly the kind of material I really appreciate. Let's go back and we'll start at the beginning. We therefore maintain that the universal cause transcending all things is neither impersonal nor lifeless. So, what is the universal cause transcending all things? It's the Trinity, the universal cause that is the monarch of creation, right? I think I've done this in other videos, is the Trinity. So the universal cause transcending all things is neither impersonal nor lifeless. God is life and God is personal. In fact, tripersonal. Nor irrational nor without understanding, right? So God is definitely rational and God has understanding. In short, that it, the Trinity, is not a material body, right? The persons of the Trinity do not have a material body, and therefore do not possess outward shape or intelligible form. Interesting. So here, again, we see this word intelligible, and we're talking about things that are sensibly perceived and things with intelligible form. So we're coming back to this concept of things being sensible and intelligible. We remember the Parmenidean dictum that to be is to be intelligible. So to have sensible perception, you have to have an intelligible form, right? Right. So God has no intelligible form. He's beyond our intellect. I think we've talked about this a lot. That the content of thought is being. The content of my thought of something is some kind of intelligible form, or perhaps a sensible form, right? Sensible perception. But God has neither of these things. This is why he's beyond being. Nor does it possess quality, right? So we talked about this in the last episode, right? That there are no qualities, there are no attributes, there are no properties, right? There is no quality, right? God has no quality. Again, why would we say that, right? So you might say, oh well, the more and more if we say God has no quality, then are we just saying God isn't anything? Well, in some regard, we are, but I think more of what people are getting at is this idea that um, God has all of these attributes. That like the more attributes a thing has, the more being it is. But I don't understand where they get this or why that would be true. If we remember from the last video, we talked about how the more and more cataphatic you get, the more specific you get, right? So again, we can say this flower. You can talk about flowers. Okay, so which flower are you talking about? I'm talking about this pink flower, this pink rose. Okay, but this pink rose next to that rock, on the right of that rock and to the left of that tree. So the more and more I attribute things to it, the more and more specific and limited it becomes. So rather than attributes and properties and qualities and this kind of thing expanding the existence of a thing, it actually limits the existence of a thing. So because God is limitless, there are no qualities because, again, qualities, attributes, properties, these things denote limitation. They denote circumscription. They denote boundaries, right? It is that pink flower, not that blue flower, right? So again, the qualities are differentiating and they're making distinction and they are making delineation. They're denoting the boundaries of a thing. But God, as we know, has no boundaries. So there's no quality. There's no quality whatsoever. This next one is also good. Or quantity. God has no quantity. Well, you might say, certainly God has quantity, because we say that there are three hypostases of the Trinity. Or you might say, this paragraph is about the essence, where I'm going to get into both of these right now. So we do say that there are three persons of the Trinity. There are three modes of the divine essence. The essence is tri-hypostatic, the thrice radiant effulgence. You know, this is the kind of normal parlance that we read in our hymnography. But in a video I did months ago, I talked about how in Ambigua 1, St. Maximus says that the persons of the Trinity do not form a multitude. They are not, you cannot number them 1, 2, 3. There is no quantity of the persons of the Trinity. There is no way to delineate them numerically that way, right? This is one person, two persons, and a third person. So we can't say that they are a quantity, like how we can say my dogs are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dogs. Right. There's no perichoresis of my dogs, right? There is perichoresis of the person of the Trinity. And there is also a perichoresis of the natures in the Logos, in the incarnate Logos. So the person of the Trinity mutually indwell each other, right? They don't just indwell each other as being modes of the divine essence. The divine essence is the same. Their hypostases mutually indwell each other, right? So there's absolutely no quantity there, and there's only one. There's only oneness, right? But we even talked about how God's beyond that, right? In the last video, we talked about how God is beyond oneness, right? Well, what if you say he's talking about the essence? Okay. Obviously, I think everyone would say there's no quantity to the essence, there's no quality to the essence, there's no intelligible form to the essence, and all of this is correct. Let's go back to the first sentence, though. Is he talking about the essence? We therefore maintain that the universal cause, transcending all things, is neither impersonal nor lifeless. Now, the essence definitely has life. I'm not going to deny that, because it's the source of life, and as the source of things, we can say, as the cause of something, we can say the cause is that thing. But the essence is impersonal. The essence is not a person. Unless you want to say the essence is tripersonal. If you want to go, do that route, that the monad is a tri, the triad is a monad, I think that's perfectly fine. But if we're just talking about the essence by essence, it's impersonal. But here he says it is not impersonal. Also, the universal cause transcending all things. So the universal cause of all things is that the essence. I think that this is problematic. Obviously, this paragraph is not talking about the essence, or at least just the essence by itself, because he's talking about the universal cause of creation. So is the essence the universal cause of creation? I don't think so. I think that we would say that the Trinity is the universal cause of creation, right? Through whom all things are made. right? So the Father through the Son and in the Holy Spirit makes creation, right? So the Trinity is a universal cause. So there is the the universal cause is personal and has no quantity. Now he's not saying that there's only one person, because that would be civilianism. It really is that the persons of the Trinity do not constitute a multitude. There's no multiplicity. There's no quantity, right? Let's go on. There's no solid weight. I think that's pretty easy. Nor has it any local existence. We say he is omnipresent. So there's no, again, the apophatic statement that he is omnipresent is denying that God is only in one place at one time, which can be perceived by sight or touch, right? Now, what's interesting here, this idea of not having any local existence, is the Logos in the Incarnation does have a local existence. He is that man sitting at that well at noon when Saint Photini comes to the well. He is that man in that spot. So there is something in the Incarnation where we can talk about how God maintains a local existence in a rather particular way, namely in a human way. Let's go on. Nor has it the power of perceiving or being perceived, right? So we cannot perceive God unless God reveals himself to us, right? God must reveal himself to us, right? Now, it has the power, nor has it the power of perceiving. This comes down to a rather interesting discussion, a rather interesting idea of how does God know things, right? So how does man know things? How do created things know things? We know them as they come into being, and then we know them by their energies, and we know them as that thing over there. Now, if God were to know things merely as they come into being, then he wouldn't actually know them as their foundation, as their cause. So how does the cause of being know the thing that it causes? It knows it as a product of its will, right? So God knows things before they come into being. He knows them as products of the thing that he is going to create. So he does, when it says, nor has it the power of perceiving, it's saying God does not, St. Dionysius is saying God does not know things the way that we know them. He does not perceive things the way that we perceive them. And that's a rather complex philosophical statement, theological statement as well. Nor does it suffer any vexation or disorder through the disturbance of earthly passions, right? So God is utterly still. He's utterly simple, right? He's absolutely simple. There's no there's no movement, right? I think we talked about this again in Ambigua 1. St. Maximus goes over how God does not move, right? Or any feebleness through the tyranny of material chances, or any want of light, right? Nor any change, again, simple. God is absolutely simple. There's no change, there's no composition. Nor decay, nor division, right? So the persons of the Trinity are not divided. They are distinct, and we know that they are distinct by their hypostatic qualities, but they are not divided, right? And we say this twice every liturgy. We say the Trinity, one in essence and undivided. All right, we say that both before the Creed and right before we receive the Eucharist, because that's how important it is. Or deprivation, or ebb and flow, right? There's no up and down, or anything else which the senses can perceive, right? So we cannot perceive God with our senses. We can perceive God through our noetic faculty, and this is different from our sensible and our intelligible faculty, right? So God has to reveal himself to us. God is not naturally perceptive, much like other created being. He's not perceptive the way created being is receptive, as having sensible content and intelligible content, right? Because God is beyond being, since to be is to be intelligible. God is beyond intelligibility. God is beyond sensibility. God is beyond being, right? So he is not perceptible to the senses in a normal way. He is perceptible to the noetic, to our noetic faculty. None of these things can either be identified with or attributed. Now, again, it's interesting. I don't think actually anything can be attributed to God. We went over that in the last video, but definitely not any of these things, right? So how do we say that the preeminent cause of everything sensibly perceived is not himself one of the things perceived? It's because we can say, again, I think I talked about this earlier in the video, and we talked about this in previous videos, that the source of something can be said to be or to contain that thing because it is the source, right? But he is not that thing, right? So God created creation. God is not creation. God, we can see certain activities in the world. God's not those things, right? We can see certain behaviors in the world. God's not those things. I think the other thing that's also very, very important is that because we're talking about God, because we're talking about the Trinity, the monad is the triad, and the triad is the monad. That when talking about the divinity, we are not just talking about the essence, but we are also talking about the energy. So all of these things, intelligible form, outward shape, no sensible content, no intelligible content, the universal transcending cause, the not impersonal nor lifeless, not a material body, no quantity, no quality. These things are all stated of the energy itself. Okay, so it's not just the essence. He's not just saying this about the persons of the Trinity, but he's saying about the energy. Because the energy is why? Why? Because the energy is equally the divinity. It is not less than God. God is equally in all of his energy. And it is equally the divinity. It's not two different divinities. And we cannot attribute anything to the energy as well. We can say the energy is wise or beauty or being or this, because we can say, again, that the source of those things, the cause of those things, contains those things. But we can't directly say, oh, there's a being energy, there's a life energy. Rather, it's just God. It's God, right? Right? Simple. The energy is simple. The essence is simple. The persons are simple. There's no quantity. There are no qualities. So, a little shorter video today, but it's a little shorter section. I hope to continue this up in later weeks, and take care and God bless.